Hey, what's going on, everybody? Matt Holmes here, bodysynergytraining.com and tackwads.com, coming to you with another Feature Friday interview. And this week we got Brian Carroll on, which some of you might not know, some of you do know, as a very well-accomplished power lifter in multiple classes, very well known, also with his 10-20 Life program, things like that. I'm excited, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on and do this, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. And I've been excited for it, and I know everybody's been saying to have you on, so I know we'll have a good interview and a lot of info for everybody. So, as I was talking about before, I kind of wanted to hand it off to you and give a little bit more of your background, where you are now, and go as in depth or non, and we'll build some questions out of that for viewers that might know some about you, know your name, or people that it's the first time they've actually come across you.
Okay. Well, as you said, my name is Brian Carroll. I've been competing at a pretty good level in powerlifting for about 12 years or so. I played baseball, a little bit of football and wrestling in high school. That's where I got my weightlifting start. I was kind of drawn to powerlifting after I did two bodybuilding shows in 2001. Prior to the bodybuilding shows, I did a couple of bench-only meets while I was in high school. Did pretty well at them. Ended up doing a 405 bench at about 190 pounds raw at like I said, 19 years old, and got into bodybuilding a little bit. Didn't like that so much. So 2003, a couple of my mentors advised me that I was going to do a powerlifting meet. Not hey, let's do a powerlifting meet. It said, hey, you're doing a powerlifting meet in March, and that was December of '02. So I went into the meet, did well, squatted 705, benched 424, and deadlifted 622, and haven't looked back since. My best lifts to this date in that class, which was 220, which I did my first meet in, which I lifted at 220 up until 2007. So '03 to '07, best lifts, 1,030 squat, 633 bench, and a 755 deadlift for a 2376 total, which at the time that was number one in the United States and second in the world. 242 was my next class that I went to. My weight started getting higher exponentially from there. Best lifts at 242, which I lifted at for just a couple of years, actually. Best squats, 1,063. Best bench is 785. And best deadlift is 771, with my best total being 2570. At the time was number 2 in the world and number 2 all time. It's like the 220 total, it's fallen down since then because it's been 8 and 6 years since then. Best lifts at 275, 1185 world record squat, a 825 bench and an 800 deadlift with 2730 total. Those best lifts officially add up to 2820. So that's what I would like to do at some point. And backtracking a little bit, the 1030 was a all-time world record too, in the 220 class that I hit in '06. I've been training at a high level for quite a while. I've been programming for people for about 6 years. And I developed my own training system from the people that have mentored me, the stuff that I've learned through failures and successes, testing people, lab rats, if you will, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, compiling the information, and putting a program together it's not rocket science. It's not something that the lay person couldn't understand, and that was my goal with 10-20 Life. And the whole purpose behind 10-20 Life is 10 weeks at a time, 20 weeks at a time, 10 weeks off season, 10 weeks pre-contest for a lifetime of positive momentum and PRs. It's not just about 5 weeks, hit your best lifts ever. It's about the long-term longevity and the things that make a legend in any sport. It's not one or two. I give you a good example. Bo Jackson is probably one of the best athletes to ever walk the earth, but he lasted for about 4 seasons, and that's it. Now, you can't put Bo Jackson as one of the best baseball football players of all time because he only had a career that was about 4 years long. So with that said, legends are made with longevity, durability, and time on the field in a significant time of greatness.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at powerlifting. It's not what you did, the last 3 meets. It's not what you did for the last 2 years. It's about the whole thing over a decade. Don't count years, count decades.
And then you had also within some of that there, you had a pretty severe injury as well, correct?
Yeah, in 2009, I fell doing an obstacle course. I was actually going to be a police officer, and I landed right on my tailbone, running full speed at about 270. And my back hurt for a while. It locked up on me really bad, but I went and lifted that Saturday and squatted 1050 or something like that, and just kind of kept moving. Periodically, it would flare up, it'd irritate me, and then it got to the point where in 2011, when I squatted 1185, I felt something release in my back and down my leg, and I finished the squat, but it ended up costing me quite a bit, and it regressed from there, and ended up seeing Dr. Stuart McGill after a few MRIs. I was urged to stop lifting. I was urged to stop lifting heavy or anything for that matter. Dr. McGill helped me rehab, and within 8 months of my sacrum being fractured, L3, L4, L5 end plates being fractured, and then basically from L3 down to S1, my discs were gone, just totally black. I squatted 1100 again and pulled in the sevens and benched 825 within 8 months of being diagnosed with the fractures, the disc herniations, the retrolithiasis, all that stuff. And I'm looking to continue down that path and be better than ever. And along the way, learning, passing on, and helping others avoid the same stuff with a lot of the back prehab stuff and the core work that I'm advocating now through Dr. Stuart McGill.
Okay. And then that's kind of how 1020 Life kind of came about from your career so far, your philosophy of what you're talking about, with being a legend and how you're going out, living your life, your injury. And then also I know you're incorporating in a lot of that prehab rehab stuff within 1020 Life and the programming. Like it's all kind of a whole. So I wanted to, of course, touch on that and kind of how it came about and what you're doing with a lot of that.
Yeah. So obviously I was at a crossroads last year, in the last couple of years, but it came to a standstill last year when McGill said, your back is worn out, but I've seen people come back from this. So let's try it out. Let's start with stabilizing your core some, and let's move from there. So that was kind of the finishing touches on a program that I pretty much already developed, and it kind of came full circle with a few things that I was missing. I was under the misunderstanding that mobility was a good thing, all the foam rolling, trying to get loose, and I was loosening the wrong things, and the things that needed to be tight were not tight. For instance, my pelvis was hypermobile, which would lead to a lot of lumbar movement and sacral movement. So that was kind of the finishing touches on a missing point that a lot of programs don't include, and that's longevity and protecting your back and prehab, rehab, and core work. And that's what kind of, aside from the way my book is written and the many ways to go about training, and the weak point index, which helps you design your own assistance work. Aside from those things, this is what sets my book apart. Having someone like Dr. McGill, a phone call away, rehabbing my own back, helping countless people with their backs, their core work, their squat, their bench, and their deadlift. It pretty much put me in a good position to write from a standpoint of validity.
I like that. And that's, like you said, what really stands out, because yeah, you hear people talk like everyone knows it's good, but all the programs out there, for the most part, that I've ever seen, none of them they briefly talk about it, where yours, it's incorporated. It's a key component of the program and the longevity and still being the best, but trying to prevent injury, because we know shit's going to happen, but doing everything you can to fix somebody that has, like yourself, and then prevent it for someone that hasn't as well. Like that's a huge thing that you don't hear about as often as a big piece in a program with anything that I've pretty much ever seen.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, but not to get all nostalgic and sappy on you, but my good friend Bob, the angry coach from Elite FTS, and he was high up with Muscle and Fitness at one time. He was my publisher, and he's the one that edited the book for me. And he passed away 2 months ago today, actually. And of course, that's been on my mind a little bit today. But he was a big part in helping me write the book and organize it. And I remember specifically back in October, he emailed me and said, dude, your warm-up index is worth the cost of the book already. Because what I did was I laid out an A, B, C, and D for the warm-up. Now, I'm not saying go stretch and do all this foam rolling and stuff, but I have a comprehensive guide to warm up. Like, for instance, an exercise A or warm-up A would be some kind of a farmer's walk, something to get a sweat going, heat cream on your back, farmer's walk, suitcase carry. Then move on to B, which is the McGill Big Three, the rolling plank, the bird dog, the McGill crunch. It has short-term effects on the core, stiffening, and then long-term it's too, so acute and chronic benefits with that. And it also, again, helps you open up your hips a little bit, open up your upper back. And then a C would be a specialized movement for the day. For instance, a bench press day would be like a band fly or push-up. Or a squat would be a goblet squat or a kettlebell swing. And a deadlift would be a kettlebell swing or a pull-up or something like that to get your mind primed, your body primed, to get ready to get under the bar, warm up thoroughly. And then D would be just getting under an empty bar and doing some reps with it. It should only take about 10, 12, 15 minutes at the most. But that is a way to help prevent injury that's mixed in with your warm-up. Instead of doing mindless stuff for your warm-up, you're actually doing something to benefit your core, both for the short term and the long term. And then you're warming up thoroughly to hopefully, nothing's guaranteed, hopefully prevent, push back, or avoid injury.
Yeah. And then the key thing that I think some people might miss on that with the warm-up, yeah, the differences of just walking on a treadmill or, everyone, swings their arms around, does whatever. The thing with that is that you mentioned is it has a purpose. It's not just to, fire up the nervous system and get you sweating. It actually has the short-term and long-term benefit built into all of that of injury prevention, or if you do have some tightness, it has more of a targeted than what most people talk about of just doing a dynamic warm-up or people just going and doing some random stretches and walking on a treadmill, which, yeah, it's going to get you sweating. It's a warm-up. Your body's not cold. But this has more of a targeted purpose than just kind of throwing in some random stuff like you're saying.
Yeah, have a purpose for everything you do, especially if you consider yourself to be an athlete. I do, more than just a power lifter. You have to look at it from a bigger perspective than the time you're in the gym. And if you only treat those 5 or 7 hours a week as an athlete, and what about the other 163 or however many hours are in a week, you're going to be behind the 8 ball to start with. And that's not a good place to be in. And that was me a couple years ago. It was, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. I don't need to do that. And then all of a sudden when you're forced to do it and you have no other choice, you learn the hard way. But at the same time, it's something that lasts when you have to learn the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like you're saying too, everything should have a purpose. Just like, as we know, like every lift, even if it's a warm up, it should be you should lift that bar or press that bar as it was an actual like 1 RM, or you were, whatever percentage you want to give 100%. It should have a purpose. Same thing with everything you're doing. If you're doing shit that really isn't having a purpose, bettering you, or going to have a benefit, to me, why do it? But so many people do shit that you're just like, why? There's no benefit to that. Or you have a problem, but you're doing all this other shit that isn't fixing it. It's for something that, just building some bigger biceps, when you're like, well, look at how you move. You're all jacked up.
Yeah.
You should do something that's better for that and actually has a purpose within your training, where you see it and I see it all the time. Just shit that you're wondering what the hell is someone doing. It has really no purpose or carryover for the most part of what they want to do or their goals.
Yeah, go look in the local health club and see what these people are doing. It's like monkey see, monkey do, and it's the blind leading the blind. And unfortunately, you see a lot of it on social media too, especially Facebook or Instagram, and you're just wondering, what are you doing? You're actually a pretty good lifter, or you're a good bodybuilder, or you're strong, or you're good looking. What are you doing in there? And to dovetail into something that came to mind a minute ago, we talked about having a purpose. Get with people that have come before you, people that are great at what they do, not because they have a big following on social media, but because of their accomplishments and what they've done, who they've worked with, and who they've learned from. Get with those kind of people and learn. Now, with that said, don't ask 5 different people at the same time the same question and spin your wheels forever and not get anything done. If I had a choice, if I gave someone advice and they said, well, Brian, would you rather me talk to 5 people at once and get the same, try to get the same feedback, or ask nobody? I tell them to ask nobody, because they're going to learn more that way. If they ask 5 people at the same time the same question, they're not going to be able to apply all those things. They're going to spin their wheels, they'll be confused, and more than likely they'll get frustrated and end up quitting. At least the person on their own will stumble their way into some kind of success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I run across that all the time. People asking me, they're like, I'll give them some advice, and then they'll come back and be like, well, I read this and it says this and this and that. And there's more than one way. You're accomplished. You've kind of had your own system. There's other powerlifting training systems out there that also have accomplished lifters. So it's not like you have to do just one way. But when people start asking all over, like saying, you don't really find out what you should be doing, and you kind of have to stumble a little bit. I tell guys, I'm like, just do it. Just try it. I'm like, I can't tell you, you want to do this, you want to do that. I'm not going to tell you it's going to work or it's not going to work. You kind of have to, especially if you're experimenting, trying some different things, you have to just do it. Or if you just keep asking all these people, like I said, you're just going to kind of run in circles, and you're not going to ever really find out, because you're going to be thinking about what this guy said or that guy said, or how do I combine the two? It's like, just fucking do it.
Yeah, do something. It's a lot better than just sitting there and having a bunch of regrets one day and saying you can't do this, you can't do that. Find something you can do, whether you have injuries or you are limited on what you can do. Even if it's limited on time, condense your training down. I have a different avenue in the book that people that, like for instance, Al Caslow, one of the best lifters of this era, he travels like 5 days a week, so he just trains on Saturday and Sunday. And if he can find a local health club to train in during the week, he does it. But the guy's a stud. He makes it work. He's got a good paying job that keeps him out of the state a lot, out of the city, and he makes it work. So I have a way where you can squat and deadlift on the same day, bench on the same day, and if you can get to it on a third day, you do a little bit of assistance work and you're good. So a lot of excuses out there. The people that really want something find a way to get shit done. I could have been that person too when I had 3 different neurosurgeons say, you're headed for a spine fusion, stop lifting heavy, it's indefinite, but you're just going to speed it up anyway by lifting heavy. There's a thin line between being determined and stupid, and I did toe that line, definitely. But by going to see Dr. McGill and basically fixing my structural issues, I had some weaknesses in my core, I had some imbalances. By fixing that, it was outside of the box of what the neurosurgeons were even thinking about. They were just looking at it from okay, your discs are gone, your spine's worn down, your discs are, your vertebrae are just jacked up, they're cracked, your sacrum's fractured. So instead of just saying, okay, you're right, bones heal. They weren't willing to say, yeah, if you give it some time, you let your back decompress, you let it heal, your nerve pain may go away. No, they weren't like that at all. So seek out the best people in your industry and talk to them and, knock on one door at a time, get what you need, and then move on to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people overcomplicate things, but it's very simple. And that pretty much explains it of what you should be doing there. And then also what you mentioned in there that I think about often, it's hard to explain or to teach people. It's one of the hardest things to teach is how to push yourself to that point where you said it's like you can do something that's like, okay, that's stupid. But then there's a point of pushing right to that. And that to me is one of the hardest things to teach anybody, because it comes with, like I said, trial and error, trying out. You might end up pushing too far sometimes. That's kind of how you find where the edge is. And then just training experience, being under the bar and pushing yourself. You can't really teach that. And being a coach or something, like you're around someone enough and you can kind of see, but you still don't know how they feel. That you don't want to push them over the edge and have them hurt themselves. to me, that's been one of the hardest things trying to explain to people, because you can't really teach it. You can just explain it the best you can. Like we're saying, you got to get out there and just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some things just can't be taught; they have to be learned.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's a huge thing where I hear people all the time, well, I don't think I should push that far, this or that. I want to stay safe, or you can go that route, but you're never going to reach true potential until you kind of push. And most likely, yeah, I've done shit and, pulled this or done that. Like, it's going to happen. That's just part of it. If someone's afraid of an injury happening, just don't work out. Because I've done the stupidest things that I didn't think I was going to get injured, but, it's one of those freak things that something just happens. So it could be super light, or you could be pushing yourself. I'd rather be pushing myself to find that limit if I get hurt. Not saying everybody should get hurt, but I'd rather push myself, because even if you back off, injuries are still prone and can happen. So it's kind of like when I hear people say that, to me, it makes no sense. As you know, you can hurt yourself doing the stupidest thing compared to doing something that actually is beneficial.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points in there, and you have to take. You said earlier, you got to take every time you're under the bar, you got to treat it like it can hurt you, or it can even kill you.
Mm-hmm.
We have the guy that paralyzed himself doing the snatches overhead in CrossFit, and he all it takes is one wrong move, and it could be the end. Just think of all the more potential danger with the bar actually sitting on your back.
Yeah.
And you're going for squats or whatever you're doing. I mean, if you take anything lightly, it can end up breaking you. It can end up killing you. And it's something to keep in mind. You don't want to take it lightly. You want to treat each lift like got to be as tight as possible, because it could hurt you. Now, going back to what you're saying also about training programs and how hard to push and all this stuff. Any program can work for anyone if they give it time. You can't be a program jumper jumping from program to the next biggest thing to program to the coolest guy on the block. You got to give it time. I advise people to give it 20 weeks. For your assistance work, if you're working on your weak points, you're using the 10-20 Life Weak Point Index, give it 10 weeks. If something points you in that direction, whether it's pause squats or board presses or block pulls, rack pulls, give it time. You're not going to fix a problem in 2 or 3 weeks. And it's about long term, like I said. It's about having patience and letting each thing you do run its course. Then when you've given it your all, you've given it a true amount of time, then you can evaluate and say, hey, that wasn't good, this was good. Let's take this, let's leave this, let's move on to the next thing. Now, you hit on a point about towing the line, training hard, all that good stuff, hurting yourself. I've towed the line, I've went over the line many times. Now I learned to listen to my body. And now listen to your body sounds cliched and it sounds like something everybody says. When I say listen to your body, there's a few different things that you have to consider with this. It's not listening to your mind or the pussy inside of you saying, I can't do this, or the self-sabotage that all of us have a little bit in. I can't do this, I'm scared, I'll never be able to bench 315. No, that is not a good fear. A good fear would be something hurts today. Maybe I should shut it down. My shoulder's creaking, it's aching, it's popping. Maybe I shouldn't try that 315 on the bench today. But the person that feels great, they smoke 300, and then they talk themselves out of being able to bench 3 plates, that's the type you have to steer away from. You have to, it takes time. There's different ways to go about it, whether it's going straight to 320 or 330 or making yourself get under the bar, facing your fear and crushing it. There's different kinds of ways to overcoming fears and different strokes for different folks. But when you listen to your body, you got to discern, is it you being a pussy or are you really being smart and cautious? And the way I look at it is, if you're in doubt, save it for the meet. Go for it in the meet. Don't be a pussy in a meet. In training, scale it back if you're in doubt, if it's the right mindset that you're in, and save it for another day. But there's really no use to go for it in training. There's no use in going for it in training, because training doesn't mean anything. And at the end of the day, we all want to be able to move. We want to be healthy to some extent, when we're in our 50s. And being smarter along the way will give us a better chance to be in that position.
Yeah, and I think that's the best. Like that was a great example of how you explained it there, and how I was saying a lot of that is going to come with one, having a good coach that can see after they've been with you, kind of know, talk to you, and be able to dig out of like, okay, it's a bad day, or you're being a pussy.
Yep.
Having that coach, and then also, as we're saying, being under the bar and just having that time and experience, that's where you're going to learn those things, and paying attention to what's going on and saying, okay, this is just mental, or my body feels like shit. If you're still new, yeah, it's going to take some time. You don't have, as you and I know, like, you're not aware of all this shit that's going on with your body. You're moving in ways, doing things you've never done. So don't be dumb about it, because I've seen some guys that I'm in the gym like, whoa, like, that's just stupid. Like, there's pushing the line, and then there's, okay, you're dumb and you're totally going to hurt yourself. Like, that's not about, I'm just being tough and pushing myself. Like, it's stupidity. So there's, don't be a pussy in a way. But, still, if you're new, you want to push yourself, but don't be an idiot and do something that's unsafe, that even an experienced lifter would not push themselves that way.
Yep, that's exactly it. You got to know when to push it, know when to throttle it back. And, it takes time to do that. And you hit on a good point about coaching. That's another thing too. If your teammates are saying, hey, your knee's caving in a lot, it looks off, it looks unstable, your shoulder looks unstable, why don't you back off a little bit today? Be open to people making suggestions for you. But again, take everything that's said to you with a grain of salt. Don't just be a yo-yo or a ping pong ball and go back and forth. He said this, he said that. Oh, no, I shouldn't do this. No. Take everything, take it in slowly, digest it, see if it applies to you. If it doesn't, move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good one. I know when I had Dave on before, we kind of talked about things like that of, taking advice from people, to use what's useful, and you don't have to always take advice from everybody, because you're going to typically know, but don't be stupid. It's one of those weird things that you just, again, a lot of the stuff is just, it's almost like a learning experience. It's experience, just kind of experimenting with it all and figuring out, maybe one time you're going to listen and you're going to be like, oh, wow, okay, I should have pushed, I shouldn't have listened. Or another time you don't listen, you're like, oh, fuck. Next time I know to listen, and that kind, you're going to know everything,
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. I tell people, after working with Dr. Stuart McGill and knowing him well and knowing a lot of his material, I tell people to stop stretching your back, stop bending at the waist during the day, stop stretching when you're warming up. And they won't listen. Then finally, when their back's hurting, I'll say, do the McGill Big 3 every day. Do some suitcase carries and walk first thing in the morning. Every time, within 3 weeks, their back feels better. Some it's totally good. Some it's just a little bit better. But sometimes they have to have that epiphany themselves and figure it out on their own. Some people will listen right away and reap the benefits of it. Everyone's different. And unfortunately, and you can't blame everyone for this either, for not wanting to listen. There's a lot of bad information out there, a lot of misinformation, a lot of flat-out stupidity that's on print, that's on these blogs and stuff, that people have no business saying certain things or advising certain things when they've never done it themselves. They've never got anyone stronger. They've never done anything. But the problem is, anyone can log onto a website. Anyone can get a CrossFit certification and then open their $150,000 gym if they have money. And there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad out there. You just got to be careful of who and what you listen to.
Yeah. And didn't you write, I think it was you maybe about a month ago, writing something about the foam rolling and the back and stuff before squats?
Yes, absolutely. It was about 2 months ago. Basically, one of the things that I was doing to perpetuate my back issues was rolling it every day. I'd flop down on the ground, I'd roll my back, roll my lumbar, roll my sacrum, pop it, get up, and be like, damn, my back hurts. Why does my back hurt? I'm rolling it. So this is fact, this is an opinion. The muscles of the spine are made to stop movement. Your shoulders and your hips are made to move. So core tightness, core rigidness, core stability is ready to get under a heavy load. So if you are loosening everything up before you're trying to be as tight as possible, that's problematic on many levels. Now, foam rolling inherently is not bad. I roll my hips, I'll roll my glutes, I'll roll my quads. But the people that advocate and the people that follow rolling blindly just to be limber, just to roll, again, that's problematic on many levels, especially if you're a power lifter. You need to be tight. Your hips need to be have enough movement in them for you to squat below parallel, to get in position to deadlift, to set up on the bench. Your shoulders have to be mobile enough, but not too mobile to bench good. You get set up on a squat bar, your hands behind your head. So just doing the mobility work or foam rolling or any of that stuff blindly is potentially dangerous. Most importantly, potentially dangerous, and two, can make your performance suffer. So there's a lot of things that I hit on, but foam rolling itself is not bad. It's just abused, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, it's kind of funny when I read that, because I used to do it a lot. I don't do it as much. I almost do it a little bit less now than before. I used to do a lot of it before I deadlift, before I squatted. And I kind of noticed, I was like, let me back off of it a little bit, see how I feel, just do a few basic moves, especially if I feel a little tight or like something's kind of like out of place. Over the years, I've kind of figured out, oh, okay, there's something there. And I kind of roll and it like, pop or whatever, or just kind of loosens up some. And then from that, I kind of start training and then work it out from that of where to go on that. Should I roll it out a little bit more, or is it good? And I base it off of that now.
Yeah, and a good dynamic warm-up, like I start to that, getting the sweat going with the carry, doing the McGill big, a specialized warm-up, like a goblet squat before you squat, and then just getting under the bar for
Did I lose you? I think internet's going out a little bit over on your side. It's the awkward silence. I don't know if you can hear me still or not. Should come back, hopefully. You there?
Yep. Okay. Where'd I lose you at?
Yeah. I don't know what happened there with the internet. Something's going on with it a little bit, but we got you back, so that works.
I'm coming in. Where did I lose you at?
It's what I heard last. I don't know, the recordings usually catches it, but are you saying, and just get in under the bar and then it cut off?
Yeah, just the warm-up I advocate in 1020 Live, getting under the bar, and just starting off with that is a good way to make sure you're warm. A lot of people, I think they need foam rolling because they don't get warm enough before they get under the bar. There's nothing wrong with getting loose per se, but you don't want to beat your body into submission with the foam roller just to say you feel loose and limber before you start squatting.
Yeah.
Warm up. Yeah.
Yes, the warm up, and that's where when I started to do a lot more of the dynamic but purpose based on certain things of knowing my body. Okay, well, I'm a little bit tighter here, and like today I was like, man, I felt a little bit tighter within my hips. I've been working through an SI injury, which of course threw some other things off. And I was like, wow, like I felt really tight. And I want to do squats where I was going to deadlifts today. I ended up doing like power cleans, not super heavy, but I was like, let me not do squats because of how I feel. Deadlifts, I did just 135 and I was like, cool, great. Like I could have maybe gone a little heavier, but I was like, let me just back off. And the power cleans felt great, and I hadn't done them in a while, so it's kind of something to mix it up mentally. But it was like, okay, let me keep moving. Now let me warm up. Let me do this stretch in between sets a little bit, not super long, a little shorter of a static. And it kind of opened me up. And then surprisingly, I think maybe it really didn't have to do with some of that, but I haven't been able to do any like step-ups, lunges, or anything in a while. I'm like, well, I'm kind of limited. Let me just try something different. And all of a sudden I was able to do that. And kind of because it put me in that situation where I haven't been able to, where if I would have just been like sticking with the normal, okay, let me just do deadlifts and some squats and this and that, I probably wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done power clean. So like I say, it's kind of just getting under that bar, warming up, seeing how the body feels. Maybe you need to do more. Maybe you're fine. It's nothing that's completely set in stone either. And I didn't even bring my roller with me today. I totally forgot to pack it in my bag because it's still in my travel bag. And I didn't even use it, and I felt still totally fine. It wasn't like, oh, God, I don't have a roller. I can't work out now.
Yeah, that's the way it's portrayed, unfortunately. You got to have it in. And I think it's a good recovery tool for people with tight quads or sore quads or hips or glutes, even hamstrings a little bit. But it's highly problematic rolling your back, expecting that to benefit you when a more mobile, flexible back is more prone to injury and it's going to be weaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then like with some of that where I've noticed just the differences, and it could just be me, it could not even be that, where I've noticed some days where I'm not doing as much and I deadlift and it feels like I'm just tight. And again, it's probably not even my back. It's just warming up where it's hard for me to kind of keep in a proper back position. So I roll out a little bit more, with my quads, things like that. And then just slightly do a little bit more in some really short stretches on the roller of just kind of being able to move my back to get it to be able to kind of straighten out, and then it works. But it's like I used to do it every single time, and then when I stopped, it was like, well, what the hell was I doing that for? Like, it really didn't make any difference of doing it every time. It only made a difference when I kind of noticed I needed it.
Yeah. Do it as needed if you're going to do it. That's what I suggest with any. I mean, like you said, like we talked about, and a couple questions ago, everything you do needs to have a purpose and a reason behind it. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels.
And then kind of as we were talking about some of the deadlift, I kind of wanted to bring some up on that, especially because I was at the gym today, giving a few cues and helping a kid out with his. What are, we'll get into some of the lifting stuff now. What are some of your main cues you like to use with guys or girls when they're going through the deadlift, of making sure they're in a proper back position, that they don't lift their hips and lock out their knees, before and lose that extension and lose the power? Because that was what I was going through with the kid today. He started with a good pull and then would lift his hips, lock his knees out before the bar even passed him, slow down, and then as soon as he got above him and was able to get more of that hip drive in, he finished it strong. So I was giving him cues. So I kind of wanted to touch on that with you and see, what are some of the main things you see and some of the cues that you use to fix them?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big forum whore. I got a lot of content on powerrackmedia.com. In the book 1020 Life, you can get it at 1020life.com. You will find just about everything you can think of as far as form cues, how to set up, the approach, everything. So starting with the squat, we'll start with the deadlift since you brought that up. The biggest thing is it starts with your grip. You have to have a good grip. You have to lock that thing in. You want to try to bend the bar. Hips for certain people are going to be different. Some people, depending on their torso length, their leg length, some people need a deep hip. Some people will pull with hips barely low at all. Driving their heels through the floor to break the bar off the floor is super important, not jerking it. So driving, keeping your chest up, having a good lifter's wedge where your lats are pulled down and locked in, your chest is up, your chin's in a neutral position. It's more up than down. Once the bar crosses the knees, you want to keep throwing your head back and squeezing your glutes. You see some people get really soft at their lockout or miss at lockout. It's because their hips don't come through, and that is done by squeezing your glutes.
Okay, perfect. And then trying to think with someone that is basically like, I'll use the example then I had now. If someone's locking out their knees before they pass, they basically kind of raise their hips too high and lock their legs out and lose a lot of that power and slow down. What would be like the first two things you would tell them to try and keep that from happening?
Yeah, they end up doing a stiff leg deadlift, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
I would look at their toe position to start. I'd look at their hips. Some people, if their hips are too low, their hips will rise up and then the bar will break the ground. Mm-hmm. So they're too low, they'll raise up and then the bar will come up. If you have their hips a little bit higher, a lot of the time as their hips rise, the bar will rise too. So that's the first thing I look at. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a higher hip, believe it or not, will lead to a less stiff leg.
Okay, a higher hip, okay.
Because if it's too low, they're going to squat up and the bar still hasn't even left the ground yet. And then they hit the point and they round over and they crane the bar up.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. I could see that. Okay. And then like with today, what I was trying to tell kid, I noticed like his hips would come up before. And one of the ones that I saw is like, keep that head up. And then I was like, keep your chest, because it was almost like he would start to lift, and like you're saying, then it almost turn into a stiff leg, lift his hips up, and his chest would go from being at a normal angle to down. And I was like, keep your chest up. And all of a sudden, his hips, everything was rising at the same time. He passes. They still have that slight bend, pass them, and then straight up.
Yeah, another thing, too, they play with their stance, play with the hand grip, too. Some people need a little wider stance or narrow stance. Hands further out towards the rings. Some need closer. I was working with someone the other day. Keep a lookout for some video that I worked with Scott Paltos, who was a top CrossFitter. Now he's going to do a powerlifting meet, and we broke down his deadlift because he had the exact same problem. He would stiff leg it, rip it off the floor. I had him start slowing down off the floor, driving his heels. I moved his hands out, his legs out a little bit, had him wedge in there a little bit where his chest was up and his lats were pulled down, and immediately within 3 reps, his form was fixed.
Wow.
So there's a lot of different things to look at, but the big thing would be play with the hip position. We raised his hips up a bit, and it fixed it. We moved his feet out a little bit, and his grip out, and it was perfect.
Okay. Yeah, and that's another thing I've noticed a lot of people are like, oh, check my deadlift out. And I'm like, you're in like a super low squat position trying to deadlift.
Yes, it can end up being a handicap.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, well, I'm kind of stuck. I can't go any heavier. I'm like, well, you're making it the range of motion 10 times more than it needs to be, and then they're slack also in it before they even get into a good tense position to lift and building that up. So that's a huge one I noticed. It's either usually that, and I've done it, especially when I get heavier and I'm trying to fix on certain things that I've had from other people watching I tend to lift my hips too fast when I go really heavy, which is kind of a common one. So fixing that, but then the most common that I do see of non-lifters or average gym goers that are just trying to learn to deadlift, or they just lift. There's not really more than that, is the squat position. They think they have to be super low, or they just do a stiff leg deadlift. They really don't come down, bend their knees at all, and they think, okay, here I go. And which again, that's a variation, but they think that's the main one. And like, oh, why can't I get any heavier? Well, that's the reason why. Learn a proper deadlift. And it's hard. I had the conversation today with the kid. It's hard when you don't have someone there to watch you, or you're trying to watch yourself. He was looking to the side in the mirror. I'm like, just look straight ahead. I'm like, use a camera. Like, for one, that's a bad position to put yourself in, looking to the side when you're pulling that bar, and have a camera. If you don't have someone there to coach you as a coach, have a camera, put up the video, or look at it afterwards. Look at plenty of YouTube videos. Everyone's got stuff out there so you can see, and you can have a comparison of like, here's where I got that going. So there's a way around it. You don't need to. Too many people think they need a mirror, looking in a mirror, or, well, I'm trying, but I don't have a coach. Get a camera. Look at yourself that way, perform it the best you can, and then critique it. Everybody needs it. Everybody does it.
Yeah, everyone's got a smartphone these days. Use your camera off your smartphone if you're limited on funds. Post it up on YouTube. Find the different Facebook groups, and someone will help you out. And you're right about YouTube. You can find out how to do anything on YouTube, whether it's how to take a gun apart, whether it's how to turn your Asus webcam right side up. I mean, you can find anything on there. Yeah. And so do a little research on your own. Post your videos up, and let's learn from each other.
Yeah, and there's so many people out there. It's kind of silly to say for someone to not be able to learn how to squat, bench, or deadlift, even if you don't have a coach, or you're in a big, powerlifting gym, if you're at a regular gym and just do your thing, upload it, and there's plenty of people out there, because you do it, I'm sure, and there's plenty of other coaches that do a lot of online coaching. Here's what you're doing, here's this, here's that, look at the form, and go from there.
Yep. The internet has opened a lot of avenues for people to not only build businesses, but to get help from these people that normally wouldn't be able to get help from. You're in California, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all the way in North Florida, and here we are having this video interview. And 15 years ago, that wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. Yeah. People did it before, they found a way. Well, it was a lot harder. They'd have to travel, go to gyms, spend time there, whatever it was. But now it's like you could do it anywhere, all over. Even when I was in Iraq, I've had stuff where I filmed it and I uploaded it to certain people. I'm like, tell me what's fucked up and what I need to fix.
Yep.
And that was it. Super easy these days.
Yeah, you can get to the point now where you can load up a video, two-way video like we're doing now, and you can bring it in the gym with you and say, hey, watch this squat I'm doing. What am I doing wrong? I've done that for people. And it's a simple way to go about immediate hands-on training from 2,000 miles away or more.
Yeah. There's Skype is an amazing thing. You just hop on and here you go. Okay, cool, great. And then you go on with what you're doing. There's no excuse not to. And people come up with it. Well, I don't have this. I don't have that. It's that. It's like you can't really say much about it when someone's like, they're like, well, okay, I guess you're right. As you and I, there's no reason not to.
When people are dumb or closed-minded, there's no reason to prove that they are by telling them that they are. You just let it go.
Yeah. I'm sure that's something I've learned from ever. I used to let everything and want to do this. It's now comes to the point where I'm like, fuck it. It's not a waste. It's a waste of my time. Where there's someone that does want that information out there, they just don't know it's there. They haven't found it. When they do, they're going to be willing. So it's like, fuck it. Don't even waste time on that. Find the people that will listen and do want that, because they're the ones that you really want to be helping, not wasting time on those that you're literally wasting your breath.
Yeah, they message the same question to 5 other people on Facebook at the same time as you, and you can tell where it's going, and your friends tell you, hey, did you get this question from so-and-so? Yep, same question. Well, he's not going to listen to any of us.
Yeah, I've had clients like that before, even where, they're like, well, this person, or I've tried this. You can kind of see a pattern when you've been in it. Like, I've tried this program. You're telling them, like, oh, look at this article I found, or this is an interesting read. What about this, or what about that? And I'm just like, and I've told people, like, you trust me? All right, then. Like, stop overcomplicating it, looking like you're just going to go in circles and we're not going to get anywhere, because you're constantly battling with something that you just found that's going to conflict with what we're saying.
Yes.
You're always going to find that. Because, again, it's not to say there are people, which is bad, that their system they think is the best and everything else sucks. Where theirs works just fine, but it doesn't mean yours or mine or someone else's doesn't work. But they'll be like, that sucks. Those don't work. Do this. And that's a harm, I think, to the industry of someone that does that, because they should know better. Like, yours works, theirs works, West Side, all this stuff works. It's just a lot of it's personal preference. Some people really love that and some people really love that, and that's fine.
Yeah, there's more than one way to skin the cat.
Yeah.
And, you ask any expert, whether it be someone like Dr. Stuart McGill or John Meadows or someone like that, they'll tell you that pretty much the answer for everything is maybe. Yes and no are rarely applicable straight up without any details. And to say that something can't work is pretty closed-minded.
Yeah. And that's, I had John on a couple weeks ago, and that what you were just saying kind of makes me think of this kid that I've been training. I talk about kind of often because he's new. So there's always like things for me to bring up when we're talking about interviews, because it's like it's happening right there, and it's a good example. I've been doing some training stuff with him. A lot of it was kind of main strength base on squat, bench, deadlift, and the press. And he wanted to put on size. He's younger, getting his condition up, really well-rounded. And now he's like, well, I kind of want to focus on more. I don't want to give up the strength, but he wants to do a little bit more bodybuilding. I'm like, cool, that's great. And so I was like, there's this way, and this way you can do it based off what he said. And I was like, this is my opinion. I'm like, you're going to have to experiment on it and see what works, track it. And I was like, it's like, well, I can't figure out how I can squat, I can bench, and I can deadlift to do all this. I'm like, squat and deadlift on the same day. He's like, that's not going to hurt me. I'm like, so plenty of people do it. Like, you just made like so many people do it and still
I do it. Yeah.
And you get great results. And he told me the other day, he's like, I squatted and then I deadlifted, and I felt like, maybe my deadlift went down on, he's like, I don't know if it was maybe mental or it was. And I'm like, I can't tell you yes or no. I'm like, you're just going to have to try it. I was like, my opinion is partially knowing him. I'm like, it was mental part of it, I think, because
Right.
knowing just how he's been kind of conflicting on what to do. I was like, and I'm like, your body's not used to it. So most likely you're going to be a little bit tired after you really push it on a squat, and then you go to deadlift. When your body gets used to it, it's going to be, okay, it's great. It knows that's what you're doing. So you're going to be able to push, and you're not going to notice. I was like, I could be wrong, but based off my opinion, I'm like, that's it. It's half mental. The other half is it's the first time you've done it. So your body's like, what the fuck is going on right now? It's not used to it.
Yeah, it's something that you'll have to adjust to a little bit, but most of the people I've found really like it after a little while. They feel nice and warm. They can jump right in the deadlift, not have to do much of a warm up, and they can knock it out pretty quick. Once they have the the session going from the squat, they go right into it and they just knock it out.
Yeah, and I've even thought of doing that somewhat, of switching it up and kind of trying some different things, because I've had it where it's like I've been crammed on time or I've been traveling. I'm like, okay, great, I'm going to squat and I'm going to deadlift, and I call it a day. And
Right.
then the next time it's like, okay, I'll focus on more accessory, this and that. So it's a great way. And like I said, it's not the only way. It's just one of many ways. I know some people that they only squat 1 week and the next week they only deadlift. Or like, there's so much stuff out there. And like I said, it's not yes, that is, or that. It's more of a maybe. Like, just fucking, you're going to have to try it. One thing is going to work for someone that might not work as well for you. I've tried programs where, like, you know what, I gave it 8 weeks. Let me try it. Totally different than what I'm used to. Volume was crazy, this and that. And all of my lifts went down, but I gave it a full 8 weeks to see. And I was like, okay, definitely not working of what was. And I kind of took all the shit out that I'd added in and went back to the old school and then made changes based around that. So it's just experimenting. You're going to have to try.
Yep, that's what it all comes down to. It's a big experiment. Strength training, bodybuilding, all that, trying to be the best athlete you can be. It's all a big experiment. We're all wired differently, different genetic makeups, different backgrounds. Got to find what works for you and maximize your potential with optimum training.
Yeah. And it's all about maximizing that stuff, because you can find something, but if you don't utilize it to the best potential that it has, you're doing yourself a disadvantage, because a lot of people, I think, have decent programs for themselves, but they're not optimizing it or spending the time they should on the shit that is working. And then they're, like we're saying, they're wasting their time on stuff that isn't. It's like, use
Right.
what is working and do more of it. Do less of the shit that doesn't work, do more of what is working. But seems like people still don't, because like they hop around. Well, let me try this, or I just read that, so I'm going to try that. You get nowhere.
Yeah, they're too impatient. You got to give it time. And to find your place in optimal training, your niche, it takes time. It might be years. It's not going to be weeks, months. You have to find what works for you, and that takes time. And a lot of people don't have the patience to experiment and experience the whole strength training. What word am I looking for? They just don't want to put the time in, because it is a very taxing mentally and physically process to find what works for you. People would rather jump to the next big thing that the so-and-so lifter is using or doing or whatever, instead of finding their own route, blazing their own path, and doing it the way that will benefit them the most.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and like I say, it's a journey. Too many people think of it. They know they're going to do it for a while, but they don't treat it as that. They treat it as an overnight fucking thing. They're going to keep going to the gym. They're going to the gym years later, but they're still not in that mindset of trial and error. It's going to take time. Be patient. It's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but every day they're in the gym. It's like you see it in any commercial gym, or I see it. Guys are working out and they start flexing. Like, yeah, you have blood flowing. You got to pump. So it's going to look bigger, but they expect, like, you don't grow like that. You don't grow lifting the weights. You
Right.
grow after your strength goes up after, but everybody expects it to happen right then and there.
Yeah, you got to give it time.
Yeah.
Think long term.
Yeah, exactly. The long term, yeah, some short term things are going to happen. That's just all of a sudden, whatever, a lift's going to go up, more than others. And some are going to go slower. You can't, as long as it's not decreasing or just sitting the same, an increase is an increase, and that's going to add up over time.
Yeah, even if it's just 5 pounds or an extra set of clips, gains, small gains over time add up to big gains.
Exactly.
And you have to be patient.
Yeah.
Accept what you can get. Don't be picky.
Yeah, and that's where it's like if shit's broken, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But if it's broken and you're sitting, you haven't made any progress, or you're going backwards, then you need to sit down and look, okay, what's wrong? But if you're like, okay, well, I gained 5 pounds here, 10 pounds there, 5 here, you know, and someone's like, well, something's wrong. So to me, I look at it and you're like, what the fuck's wrong with it? You're getting progress. Like you're not just, it's not 12 weeks later and you're still the same or you went backwards. That would be a different story. And I think too many people don't think of it that way. You know, when you tell them like, here's real accomplished, whether powerlifters, CrossFitters, weightlifters, here's what they expect over a 12-month or, 12 weeks, whatever their progress. And I'm like, here's what they actually get. And these are top level people. And they're like, wow, they think, you magically are going to put up all these big numbers or get all crazy progress overnight. When you actually break it down, like here's these people, here's the small progress that they did make, here's what they made. And here's what that actually breaks up to in a 12-month cycle. And they're like, wow, okay. And then you show them your numbers, like yours are just the same as that. Some of them might have jumped up quicker. And they're like, oh, it's almost like people don't realize it until you actually show it and explain it to them.
Yep. It takes time. People think that the gains that they make in the first year or two will be like that forever, and that's not the case. You'll generally make the most progress and the biggest gains. They say beginner's luck or whatever. They'll do good for a while, then they'll stagnate. They'll not be able to adapt, and then they'll get tired, burnt out, and move on. That's what you see with a lot of people after the first year or two. And any, especially strength sports, it gets hard and they want to quit.
Yeah. Shit's going to get hard. Yeah. A lot of people get great, like weight loss, for example, or fat loss. Sometimes people lose really quick. And that's great. That's a lot of times that's going to happen if someone's been sedentary, they're not used to all this shit, and you give them all this stuff that's great for them. And then they're like, that progress slows down, but they're still making progress. They're like, I don't know what's going on. And then that's when they jump to something else, or they get frustrated. It's like, you're making progress. It's going to take time. You know, like, oh, look at this person that lost 100 pounds. It's like, you realize how long it took them that? Like, here's what it broke down to per every 4 weeks, basically, they lost. That little bit adds up, but people just, and I think that's part of society and everything in general, want quick results, this and that. People are kind of impatient. They don't think of small progress. Like that's how shit gets there. People, whether it's successful, whether you're building a building, it's like building just magically happen. It's all the small steps, piece by piece, that adds up, each training session. And then within the training session, every single squat that you do, every single accessory lift that you do, everything has that purpose, and it adds up over time. And people they look at the big picture and they want to jump straight to that, not all the shit that matters to get you there.
Yep. Short goals achieved over time will lead to the big picture, but it takes time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure, with all of the weight classes you've been in and the massive squats and numbers you put up, sure you weren't like mad, thinking it's just going to magically happen. You didn't get over 1,000 pound squat overnight. It was built piece by piece by piece.
Yeah, it was, I want to squat 800, and then I want to squat 900. And I was like, wow, I did 900, let's do 1,000, and then 1,100, and then, almost 1,200 so far. So it's taken a long time, built over, squatting since I was 17 years old. And I'll be 33 this year, so that's 16 years of hard work, with the foundation being laid as a kid before I started powerlifting. And, more built upon that over the last 11 years of lifting at a high level, 12 years.
Another thing I wanted, because I know we're getting jumped on here with time. One more I wanted to ask you on with a lift. Also, everyone has always asked, of course, everybody wants to have a big bench. What are some cues and things that have helped you build a bench with all those small pieces that added up to a big bench, be it form, be it accessory work, all those little things that kind of helped you to build that?
Yeah. So start off. We'll start with form because you can't outbench a form with bad form. You can't make it strong if your form sucks. You're going to make the most gains by nailing your form and dialing it in and making every lift look the same. So you're going to start with your feet, whether you go with the tucked stance or your feet out wide like I do. You're going to need them dug into the ground and tight. You need to be stable. You need your traps dug into the bench. When you take the hand off, you need to bend the bar, get your back involved, your lats and your rhomboids involved. Um, you want to, again, lower the bar at a decent pace on the way down, touch somewhere around your sternum. You don't want to bounce it. You want to either do a light pause or a light touch. And then you want to drive your heels through the ground when you go to press. And you want to arc it, not straight up, not straight back, somewhere where it starts straight up and it comes back over your eyes. And that will let you use your hip drive and your leg drive the most. And as far as accessory work, board presses are great. Floor presses are great. Board presses with the close grip, back grips with the board press or floor press. There's a lot of different things that if you have a limited amount of supplies or equipment, you can do and build a big bench. And tricep press downs with the band, you could do flies with them. There's a whole 10 weeks of exercises right there that I named between the floor press, close grip, board presses, and then some band accessory work, you're set.
That's awesome. That's perfect. And I think that, the form is, I'm not going to say one's more important than the other of what I see, because I see people with decent, solid form, but they don't do any accessory work. They just bench, bench, and bench and think they're going to get a big bench. And then I see people that have bad form, and they're like, well, why is my bench not going up? Well, you're lifting your feet up. You're fucking wobbling all over the place, shaking around, and this foot comes up, or you're moving your feet in the middle of it. And I was like, that seems to be one of the biggest things, and that people kind of jump away from when I tell them, like, plant your feet. They're like, but I'm benching. Like, what does my legs and this and that and my feet have to do with it? It's like, well, it's a solid base. What's going to be stronger? You being all over the place and not being solid? Think of how you're standing. If you're trying to push something, are you going to have your feet on the ground, or are you going to be moving all over the place or stand on something unstable and try and push? Like, you're obviously your feet planted in a solid position, you're going to be stronger to push. And I get guys like, well, I'm not trying to lift a lot of weight. And I just want to get big. And I'm like, great. Well, I don't even need to talk to you then, because like that's like how we're saying, it's like, okay, that's just comes to a point where it's a waste of my time then.
Yep. Yeah, so you don't want energy leakages, meaning being loose, wasting your energy when it should be driving the bar back up, and you're wiggling or moving your feet or dancing around. That's no good. The bench is a full body movement. Your legs, your hips, your back should be sore from pressing, driving your heels to the floor, lifting your hips up to drive. Your butt needs to be in contact with the bench, but it doesn't mean it can't move. The bench is one of these things that, especially the bench, it goes for the big lifts in general. Not everyone can get stronger. It takes time, especially right away. They can't get stronger, but everyone can maximize their form right away. That's something you can fix in 15 minutes. And that's something that can make you better right away.
Yeah. Form, well, because a lot of people, I think, have more potential. And I know you'll agree, they have more potential than what they are lifting, but their form sucks.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. You can't overcome a form issue by just getting a little stronger.
Yeah.
You're going to have some of both.
Yeah. Fix that, the form. And like, I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do it when you work with someone, like instantly they hit a PR.
Yep.
They come in, you're like, okay, do this, this, and this, and bam, all of a sudden this energy that they're losing gets utilized. It's not wasted energy that you said, like, it's just disappearing, coming out of the body because of shitty form, or your body mechanics aren't working optimally because, like we were saying earlier, your hips are lifting, your knees are locking out, all this stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I pride myself on making people better, not just stronger, but better, whether it's utilizing their leverages better, their form better, maximizing their time in the gym. That's what I do. And I can do that with the best of them.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. With people that want to know more on all the stuff that we're talking about here, with whether it's form or programming, the 1020 life, all this stuff, what's the best place for them to read more about all your stuff, contact you about training, get the 1020 life, everything?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Contact me at briangcarroll.com. You can get me there. My email address, briancarroll.lmt@gmail.com. The site where I have a whole team of people, top lifters in the world, powerrackmedia.com. Got a ton of strength content that goes along with 1020 Life, some above and beyond 1020 Life. And then I got a ton of training logs there, a bunch of information, top to bottom, whether you're a bodybuilder, powerlifter, CrossFitter, weightlifter, something there you can get something out of. And contact me, let me know if there's something you'd like to see also.
Perfect. Awesome. And then I'll get any links, all that stuff from you too, and I'll post it below this. Facebook, any links for people that want to contact you and check out 1020 Live, do train, or just check out everything on the Power Rack Media, all that stuff. I'll post it below so people can have access to it as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Perfect. And I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a lot of great info on stuff here, from the form and just overall lifting and the long-term aspect of it, not thinking the marginal and short-term. So that's great.
Very cool.
Awesome. You got anything else you want to add?
No. I want to thank everyone that supported me with the book and with my training and lifting over the years. There's so many people to thank, but you know who you are. Thank you for the people that stood by me, and thank you for people like yourself, Matt, that want to help promote the good people out there, the good programs, and the things that people should be doing. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love doing all this stuff too, and I know a lot of people get a lot out of it, so it's great. So I know you're busy, so I know I always appreciate everyone taking the time to do the interviews.
Yeah, anytime. If you want to do one a little more specific, if you want to get into details of the book, let's do that for next month or something.
Perfect. I like that. We'll set something up on that. And if anybody's got questions, hit up Brian. If you got questions also then on something like that, so we can do later, shoot him Brian, shoot him myself, and we'll definitely touch base on that. So stay tuned, everybody, for next week's Feature Friday. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.